Today, we are talking about discipling the next generation. Generation Z is the least religious generation in
Having
America.
trouble with the word generation.
Struggling. Gen Z is more likely to listen to Jordan Peterson than Richard Dawkins.
How can anyone believe this stuff?
Which tells us they're asking different kinds of questions than the things that Richard Dawkins were asking.
Gen Z, what age group?
12 to 27.
Okay.
This is good news that they're asking these kind of questions because it means they're actually not opposed to faith. They are wrestling with it. We see the Gen Z are struggling with what is being called the loneliness epidemic, an increase in anxiety and depression, which also tells us that they are more self-aware and that they need something greater. James K. A. Smith says in his book, We Are What We Love, the church is meant to be an experience of kissing heaven. They want liturgy and they want transcendence. They want a community because they desire discipleship. The best way to re-enchant a disenchanted generation is through discipleship.
That's fantastic. That's an amazing introduction. The word re-enchantment is huge because you've got this generation having grown up for the, I don't know, how long has secularism been prevalent? Since the Enlightenment, 100 years, 150 years, 200 years. And now all of a sudden, you've got these young adults who are saying, you know what, I don't have a sense of purpose. 75% say, I don't have a sense of purpose that gives meaning to my life. Half of them, especially post-COVID, say they regularly struggle with anxiety and depression. And they're more and more of them are saying, this is not what life is supposed to be all about. We tell students, bring your toughest questions with you. And some of them will literally do, just like I have a piece of paper in front of me, they will literally write out every question that they would like to ask God, or that they have about politics or economics.
Give me some
or
of them.
whatever.
I'd love to hear them.
Number one question they bring, how can God be good if my life is like this? It's the problem of evil. But a lot of the questions young adults bring are about things like sexuality. And his first question to me over lunch was, what is it besides consent that should govern my sexual ethic? It was literally his question, straight out, first question. And I said, have you ever thought about love? Have you ever thought about what God's love is and what it means for God to love us? And then what a man might need to do to love somebody else.
If I'm gathering what you just said, you really haven't said anything other than asked questions to cause critical thinking within him to think through why he's asking what he's asking you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I wanted the dialogue. That's 2 Timothy chapter 2. Those who oppose him, he must gently instruct.
Ray, you've been on the streets preaching the gospel since 1921. My question
Started before that.
Did you?
Cutting me short.
My bad. You've been cut short your whole life. The question for you is, how has it changed? You're talking to somebody in 95 versus today. Do you feel like there's a difference? Are they asking different questions? Has the approach changed for you?
The approach hasn't changed, but I've found, and I've mentioned this before, that COVID did the church an incredible favor. People who were not thinking about their mortality to think about their mortality. I mean, when you're 17, 18, you don't think about your death. Death is for old people. And yet it's been ushered right to their forehead.
When I see videos on the internet, it's always between people having big debates. Watch this person completely dismantle this other person in 30 seconds or less or whatever. Those always get more views. In your actual conversations with people, what percentage of the people would you say are hostile in the conversation?
5%?
5%.
Because
So 95% of the time, it's just a regular conversation. 5% of the time, it gets really hairy.
But it's because I know where I'm going. I'm going to the conscience, and the conscience bears witness with the commandments, Romans 2:15. The hostility goes down if you move away from the intellect. Stay with apologetics, you're going to get hostility, because that's addressing the carnal mind. I use apologetics to begin a conversation. Say, do you ever think about suffering? Why is there suffering? Why did God create us with all these things? We've got earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, we've got cancer, we've got all these terrible things that are happening. Why? That's playing with apologetics and just say, well, we live in a fallen creation. So what's going to happen to you when you die? Are you a good person? Move straight from apologetics, the hostility, to harmony, the conscience, and doing what Jesus did.
Last night I spoke to this Arabic gathering where it's a Bible study inside this home, and there's 50 people from the Mideast who don't claim to be Christians by and large. So I went into this environment and I said, hey, I just want to start off by simply saying that I believe that Christianity is intelligent, that it can handle your questions, it can handle your skepticism. And I want to take a quick poll here, if I may. How many people fall into, and I started naming the different categories, right? And Christianity was like number 3 or 4 on the list. How many people think that they're deep thinkers, or maybe you're a skeptic, you'd hear to the tenets of the flying spaghetti monster. Maybe you're agnostic and you're thinking, you know, I don't think anybody really knows, he, she, it, whatever's out there, this force that's kind of driving humanity. And you're getting different hands that are just kind of raised up all over the place and go, great, listen, I want to let you know, this is a great place and a safe place to just simply ask questions, because we're going to have a discussion here. And as much as I think Christianity is intelligent, I don't have all the answers. I'm on a journey just as much as you, but I believe I have the most important questions answered. Why am I here? How did I get here? What's the meaning of life? What's going to happen to me when I die? There's a lot of really good religions out there, but they don't deal with the main issue, as we talk about in Why Christianity, and that is the sin issue, because Christianity is the only worldview that deals with our biggest dilemma. Our sins have separated us from God. And now how is that gap bridged? Who's got questions?
Yeah, I love that. Not just we're creating a safe space like they create on college campuses, but a safe space to think. I can't emphasize that enough. And I'm thinking back to when I first became a Christian out of atheism. Over and over again, I realized that there are certain churches whose culture is not designed for you to ask important questions. Oftentimes what I found was it was like, oh, you know, our youth pastor, like he's an apologist. He's got, you know, he read like one Lee Strobel book. And I would sit down with him and I would ask a question and he would give me one premeditated line, but he wasn't actually thinking through the question that I was asking.
And did you see through it right away?
You see it right away. This person isn't interested in dialoguing with me. They're interested in having some premeditated response. And if my question doesn't fit, he's answering a question that I'm not even asking. And we're not really having a real dialogue. And by the end of the meeting, it was like, all right, well, you know, best of luck. He didn't want to see me again. That happened over and over and over again. It wasn't until a man named Casey invited me into his home, invited me over for dinner, invited me on vacation with him, his wife, and his nephew, and was just like, dude, I just want to read God's word with you. And when I asked him a question, he never pretended to know the answer if he didn't have it. Instead, he would just go, I don't know, but give me a week. Let me pray, let me read, and let's figure it out together.
In order for timeline of the Gospels to be true, where people were walking from one place to another, Jesus went from this place to this place. They had to have been walking for 13 months, every day, all day, out of the 3 years of earthly ministry. Walking with and asking questions.
Right.
Isn't that fascinating? I can do that. Anybody can do that.
Well, listen, you're hitting it, because discipleship today, what we call discipleship, it looks a whole lot different than it happened in the first century, right? Today, discipleship is when somebody asks, hey, will you disciple me? Great, let's go through a book together. And there's nothing obviously wrong with going through a book together. That is not biblical discipleship when we begin to think about it. Discipleship is what happens in between the everyday happenings of life. It's not just about what you teach, but how you live. And it's challenging individuals to come alongside you through the everyday happenings of life. I'm going to Costco. Hey, I need to work on my car. I have a flat tire. Will you come and help me out? I don't know how to fix a flat tire. No, I'm going to call AAA. And I want you to be there when I engage in a conversation with AAA. And you're able to just ask questions and answer questions. Hey, how would you have handled that? It's all of these things that we don't even think about when it comes to discipleship. But that is what real discipleship looks like. Hey, I'm going to have family devotions. You're welcome to come over. Hey, I'm going to watch a football game. Come on over. And they're able to see how you handle, how you interact, how you respond. Hey, has anybody ever sat down with you and worked out your financials with you? Do you know how to change the oil on a car? Do any of these things? So this is a bigger issue. This is a Christ-centric, Bible at hand issue. We're just living life.
In the midst of discipling, whether it's raising up kids or mentoring the next generation, how do we instill a heart for the lost in people's lives?
Challenge them that that's what a normal biblical Christian does. You read the book of Acts, you cannot get over the fact that these men are putting their lives on the line to preach the gospel. The church exists as a tabernacle of witness in the wilderness. We've been commanded to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. And it seems that much of the church is doing everything else but that. Go into the world to challenge unsaved people to take the light into the darkness. So that's why I'm so excited about our YouTube channel, because it goes out there and it not only reaches the lost, but it equips Christians to do so.
Something that's interesting about raising the next generation, whether you're raising kids or talking to them, is that it's not enough to just teach them Bible stories. They need to be equipped to understand the false gospels, the lies, the other stories being told in this world. And they need to be able to understand how to interpret those things and then understand the beauty of the one true gospel. And so, Jeff, your guys' ministry, the work that you're doing is doing exactly that. It's helping people understand truth from lies.
I would love for anybody who's listening who's 16 to 22, or if you have children or grandchildren who are in that age, bring us into the same orbit. Summit.org is our website. We want them to come here. We believe that most young people are really curious. They want to know what's true. They do not want to be lost and lonely and depressed and anxious anymore. They want to understand the truth, and they want to believe in it, not just to feel differently, but to live differently. And that's the kind of student we're looking for. So if you are one or know one, then just go to summit.org and you can find out more. I do a podcast there where I learn all of the time. And so what I love about my podcast is I invite one guest on at a time, 45 minutes to an hour. I get to ask them all the questions that I want to ask. And then other people can sit in on it. It's just called the Truth Changes Everything podcast with Dr. Jeff Myers.
This video is part of the Living Waters podcast. To watch full episodes and explore more content that equips you in your faith, visit livingwaters.tv. You can listen to the full episode titled on the screen for free on all major podcast platforms.